Hello there. I've been dipping in and out of the news recently, and what struck me is there seems to be a terrible lack of accountability in a lot of areas of life. And I'm not just talking about the top of society, from the very top, from the political and sort of corporate world, right down sort of like ordinary people, who are like at the bottom of society, the least advantaged, I suppose, even you could call them. Nobody seems to want to be accountable for anything, for their behaviour or their decisions. So, I mean, if you look at the top, countries make decisions, things go wrong, economic decisions are made, disaster unfolds. Oh, it's not my fault, it's the fault of country X, and they did this and they did that, it's their fault. It's nothing to do with me. And then, you look at the conflicts, people act up, and then things go worse. And they go, oh, it's nothing to do with me. Oh, I didn't do anything wrong. Oh, it's just the other guy, they're horrible. So, the political leaders, entire sort of governments even, are refusing to take any accountability for their bad decisions and the repercussions. It's just blame someone else. And that filters down through society, Sort of people going, oh, I can't get a girlfriend. Oh, it's society's fault. Women are all suck. And then, the same with women. They're like, oh, where have all the good men gone? They're all rubbish. These men are all rubbish. Can't find a decent man. And in both cases, there's no accountability. There's no like, well, am I actually somebody that someone would want to go on a date with? Am I a nice person? Have I got good qualities? They don't think about that. All they can think about is just bashing the other people. Oh, it's your fault. And that seems to be something that's percolated through the whole of society, this sense of entitlement and this idea that you can do whatever you want without any repercussions, that there are no repercussions, that everything is someone else's fault. Everybody except you is to blame. And it's just a complete inability to reflect, to look inwards, to actually see that actions have consequences and that we are accountable, whether we actually admit it or not. We are accountable for what happens when we make really bad decisions. If you go out and spend all your money the day you get paid, and say you go out and buy about like 200 lottery tickets and you had no money left, you couldn't pay your rent, you couldn't pay for any food, etc. You can't put petrol in the car. And you go, oh, I haven't the money, it's not fair, the government's so mean, nobody helps me. But the truth is, if you went out and blew your entire pay on lotto tickets, then that's your fault. It's your fault, not anybody else's fault. If you wasted all your money, And every single decision we make, we do have some level of accountability. Obviously, there's a lot of things that we can't control that are controlled by government, etc., controlled by corporations, and there's not much we can do, but we can make a lot of choices. And if we make bad choices, we need to actually own that and just go, right, okay, I've spent the last 50 years eating hamburgers and kebabs every day, and now I've got a heart problem. Is that the fault of the HSE or your doctor, or the fault of the company that sells the burgers? You could try and lay some blame at them, but really at the end of the day, if you're doing this kind of behaviour, it's your fault. There's nobody there forcing you literally to go and buy burgers and kebabs, or forcing you to go and buy cigarettes. And yeah, there is social engineering, there is advertising and some marketing and all this stuff directed at people. But at the end of the day, we do actually have a choice. We could choose, say, to eat healthy food, or we could choose like to give up cigarettes, or alcoholism's a big problem all over the world, and drug taking. You could just say, well, okay, I'm going to be more healthy. I'm going to get some help. I'm going to give up booze. I'm not going to take, X, Y, and Z. Like, for instance, fentanyl. Everyone knows fentanyl is dangerous. Everybody knows that. And even if you've been living under a rock, you know that fentanyl is dangerous and it might kill you. Okay, it's super cheap. Fortunately, it's not a big thing in Ireland yet, but it's getting bigger. And it is going to become a major problem in the future. I am sure of that, because nothing's been done. And if you decide that you're going to go and take fentanyl, then really, you know it's dangerous. It's your fault. If you're stupid enough to actually do that, you might try and tell people, oh, I just felt crap and I needed something. You're still, it was like trying to avoid accountability for what's happened to you. And you see this all across society. You see it in public services. You see it in the civil service. Everybody's passing the buck around. With the pathetic children's hospital project here in Ireland, it's been over budget by many factors, multiple factors of what it should have cost. No one is going to carry the can for that. No one's going to get the blame. As usual with the civil service, it's always someone else's fault. It's someone else's money anyway, so they just don't care. Politicians pass the buck. Our so-called leaders, certainly in Ireland, don't want to be accountable for anything. You can shove it right in their faces that they've failed, that they've done a bad job, and they just flatly refuse to be accountable. And I think that's probably the same all over the world with these leaders, if they're not even worthy of a name, most of them. They just don't accept blame. They don't accept responsibility for anything that happens. So when you look at these people who are at the top, it's the same. You look at the pharmaceutical industry, the pandemic problems, no accountability, no admission of error or mistakes or responsibility for any of that. What kind of message is it sending to ordinary people? It's saying, well, the bigwigs, the corporate CEOs and chief scientists and presidents and prime ministers, they take no accountability for anything that they do. So a lot of people think, well, why should I be accountable then? I won't be accountable either. So the net result of all this is disaster. A society that's sort of imploding and cannibalizing itself because nobody wants to be accountable. Where there's a problem, it's always someone else. So, like a simple example, if there's a huge pothole in the road and people's cars keep getting ruined, nobody wants to accept that responsibility. The person driving the car says it's not my fault, and they may have some point there. Maybe they should have been paying more attention, but they're not responsible for the road being repaired. And the council who are supposed to do that, they say, well, look, we're hiring contractors, it's not our fault, they didn't do their work. And then the contractor will say, oh, well, I was told to go here and go there, and they didn't tell me to go here and fix that one, so it's not my fault. And you go all the way up the chain, you get to the Minister for Transport or whatever even, and they're, oh, no, blah, 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 not my fault. It's just the same old story over and over again. But ultimately, really, accountability has to start with us for what we do. If I go over to some stranger and shout in their face and call them a load of 4-letter words and, act aggressively to them, if that person turns around and punches me in the face, who's accountable for that? It's me. It's me that's accountable because I went and provoked this person. I didn't have to do that. I could have just gone on with my day and done something nice. But if I've gone over and started a huge row, I have to then face the consequences of my actions. And that's the big problem. There's this disconnect between consequences and actions. And people don't like the consequences, but they just don't want to be accountable for, bad consequences. They're all very happy to be accountable when everything goes great and, everything's all rosy. They're like, oh yes, it's me. Everyone thanked me for being this great person that did this and did that, and aren't I great? But the second anything goes wrong, they don't want to be identified. They don't want to be accountable. They don't want to take any blame for anything. And you'll find this is going all across the sort of society, all across everything, the corporate sector, the political world, even in the military as well, when sort of attempted sort of operation against somebody goes wrong, they'll just come up with a load of excuses about why, it all went wrong, or try to pretend it didn't go wrong. That's the other part of the lack of accountability, is attempted gaslighting. It's like going, well, there's a cup of tea on the table and somebody goes over and knocks it over and it's spilt on the floor. And you go, why? What did you do that for? Why did you knock over the cup of tea? What do you mean? What cup of tea? I can't see any tea. It says, look, it's there right there on the floor and the cup's broken. I go, I don't see a cup. Oh, I can't see any tea. What are you talking about? And they walk off. That kind of thing, where people are actually really blatantly trying to pretend they have nothing to do with things that are quite obvious, and quite obviously their fault even, and the shamelessness of it. I don't know how people can be so dishonest and not hang their heads in shame, but you see that all across modern society. And I think it's just become so acceptable, it's become normalized to just be unaccountable and just not admit you're wrong. What's that phrase you see? Don't explain, don't apologize, things like that. People saying, oh, you should never ever apologize for yourself, no matter what. Well, I think that's the biggest load of rubbish. If I walk down the street, say for instance I've got a big load of shopping and there's a milk carton sticking out the corner of my box, and I poked an old lady in the eye with the corner of the milk carton. Just a stupid example. That's my fault. And if I injured somebody as I was taking my shopping home, of course I should apologise. If you do something wrong, not only should you acknowledge it, but if you've caused harm to people, you should apologise and try and make redress for what you've done wrong. Try and put things right. Not no apology, I'm not accepting anything. It's incredibly childish and self-centered attitude that's being encouraged by certain people. Even some influencers are taking this kind of attitude. Oh no, you never apologise no matter what happens. It's like, what kind of person are you to give anyone advice when you just refuse to be accountable for anything bad that you've ever done? It's absolute rubbish. This is such rubbish. And I think, we have to start being accountable, and it has to start with us. And if we are accountable for our own selves, our own circle, then hopefully that can spread to higher levels where, we need to hold to account local councils, town councils, county councils, and our own governments, and big business. They need to be held to account for the evils that they do. So it's no point us moaning and then being totally unaccountable our own selves. It needs to be something that spreads like a good virus throughout the society that we live in. Because if there's no accountability, there's no integrity, and there's no incentive to actually do anything right or to put mistakes right. It just means society would just continue to degrade and to become less and less stable, less and less reliable, because if no one's accountable for anything, what's the incentive to actually do anything right, to do anything properly, to put in any effort? If no one's accountable, you might as well just let it all fall down, and who cares? But who wants to live in a society like that? Nobody, really. Nobody wants to be in a world where everything goes wrong and there's no way to get anything fixed. But then if no one is accountable, then nothing will be fixed. So I think we need a sea change in how we look at things. And we need to hold ourselves accountable first for what we do before we start poking at other people and accusing them of X, Y, and Z. So, yeah, I think that's a really important issue. Especially as I've seen so many things lately, different areas of life where people are just passing the buck and refusing to be accountable for what they clearly should be accountable for. And, basically just lying and gaslighting us, trying to shirk their responsibilities. And that's going from the bottom level right through to the top. Just shows you how rotten modern society has become. And this has to change. If there's going to be any hope for the future, for future generations, we have to start being accountable. Okay, that's it for today. Hope you found it interesting. Please give it a like if you think that's interesting. You can subscribe. And if you look in the description, you'll see a link for my new Substack. There's a lot of articles I've been writing over the last 30 odd years. And I'm going back through my archives, mostly about the last 20 years, really. And sort of putting them up, and also new content too. So if you want to check them out, that'd be great. And thank you for watching. Bye for now.